Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be working on replacing the nipple cups in the oil rails. Now, HHC Diesel makes a kit. You'll get 8 of these nipple cups, 8 O-rings, and if you buy the master set, you'll get this socket. Now this socket's imperative to have because it's kind of a external socket, so it fits down in here like that, and you can take out the cups. So if you're doing this on your own, you're going to need the socket unless you can manufacture your own. So hopefully this doesn't break on me because it looks like it's, I don't know, kind of cheap, but doesn't have a whole lot of weight to it. But it should do the job. We're not putting these on to 140 foot-pounds or anything like that. So they should be fine. Now, the nipple cups here, whenever you're doing stuff like this, you want to make sure that these, move, but they want to be a little bit tight. Now, when you first move these, some of them are real tight and then they get very loose. They're easy to move, don't take much at all. So like these don't take too much to move, but this one has a little bit of tightness to it. So this one's not as bad. So we're in here doing preventative maintenance on these oil rails anyway. We got everything else done. We're doing everything else. This is, an extra couple $100 to do, which, $100 can make or break somebody. But to put this all back in and find out you have a problem here, that's going to cost you a lot more money. So we're going to go ahead and replace all of these and get these put in. Now this one's laying up because this is the one that has the ICP sensor in it. So you want to be very careful you don't break the ICP sensor. And if you're worried about breaking it, you can remove it from the rail and then you can lay it flat like this one over here. So you have two ways to do that. You can take the ICP sensor out and lay it flat. You can leave it lay up like this. Either way, we're going to go ahead and get all these removed and probably end up just cleaning out this oil rail and wiping it down and making sure there's no contaminants in it. And then also making sure that there's no contaminants on the outside of it because we're trying to make sure we do this as clean as possible. And we do have a video. It may may not be up, but will be a video about us servicing the block. So, we're worried about contaminants with that. So we've got that pretty well cleaned up and taken care of. But we're going to work on doing these nipple cups here today. And like I said, this one moves pretty free. So whenever they move very, very free, then you want to be replacing them because you want these to be stiff and not free moving. So the free moving like this shows that they're getting worn out, the O-rings. These are technically a non-serviceable item. So if Ford says, hey, your nipple cups need, they're not doing very good, they need to be replaced, they want you to buy the whole rail. So that's where the HHC diesel kit comes into place here, and they give you the socket and everything so you can take all this apart instead of buying the whole rail. So let's get into this. So the best way to do this realistically is put this thing in a vise because you're going to need to torque these to 75 foot-pounds. And in the same process, they're probably just as tight to get out. So instead of having this rail slide all over the place, you're better off putting this into a vise. As far as dummy plugs and standpipes, putting this in the vise will also allow you to install your dummy plugs and standpipes and torque those down correctly as well. So this torque spec for the standpipes and dummy plugs is going to be around 60 foot-pounds. And I had said previously that these are going to be 75 foot-pounds. So getting this all torqued in here correctly, a vise is going to be your best bet because trying to hold this and install these cups and dummy plugs and everything is going to be a disaster. Trying to hold this and torque it because 60 foot-pounds or 75 foot-pounds isn't exactly a lot, but it's enough to cause a lot of rotation. So locking it in the vise is a lot easier than doing anything else. So we have this put in the vise here and should stay here without an issue. So we're going to go ahead and start removing the nipple cups. So you can see that those were pretty tight. So we're just going to wind these out of here, get them all loosened up. You can see it's just a spacer, and then we have the actual cup itself. So down in here should be the O-ring. We'll have to get a pick to pick that out of there. These don't look to have too much wear on them. You can see that there's a little bit of a line here. See a little bit of a line. It's just a little bit of a wear mark. Nothing crazy. But down inside here is an O-ring. So we're going to go ahead and get a pick and pull that out of there. So here's our O-ring. It's pretty stiff. Doesn't have too much of its elasticity left. You can see that whenever I squeeze it here, it doesn't exactly return back to flat or round. So it doesn't really have its elasticity anymore. So that's why we're going to be replacing these, because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now you can clean this out in here if you wish. I'm going to choose not to, because that O-ring slides down in there along with the new nipple cups. That'll give it a little bit of a lubricity. Now if you wanted to clean this out, you can. I'm trying to not introduce anything to this rail, but I am going to clean this rail out. So before I put the new O-rings in, I'm going to go ahead and take all of these out. So with all of the nipple cups out and the retainers and their O-rings, we still have some plugs in this rail that we're not going to be messing with. What's nice about the oil rail here is the way that these bosses are. You can actually let it lay in here, so you don't have to worry about it falling out. But we have some oil in here, so we're just going to go drain this oil out, and then we're going to go ahead and start putting our new nipple cups in. But we're going to clean this off and clean it out. So we've got our oil rail all cleaned up here. Took a little bit of time, but we got all the oil residue out of it, and we got any of the contaminants that were in it out of it. Now when I was cleaning inside here, there was definitely a good bit of residue left from the O-rings, so we definitely cleaned that all out. So I would highly suggest cleaning this if you have the ability to. So we cleaned it out pretty good. It's cleaned off, got all the grime and grit off of it, and if you shake it, there's no fluid left in it. So that's what you want. You don't want anything left in here. And anything you do use, so I use a lot of brake clean for stuff like this because it does evaporate. So these are going to be left open to the atmosphere for a little while, so they will dry out. So we're just going to go ahead and get everything set up here, so we'll get rid of all this old stuff. We're going to go ahead and also clean these up and get starting to install. So we got our retaining rings here cleaned up. So those are all nice and clean. So now we're going to go ahead and install our O-rings. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos with O-rings, never install O-rings dry. So get your O-rings set down in the bores. Make sure that they're fully seated down there because you don't need to be pinching those either. So then you take your new nipple cups here. Just be careful with these. You don't necessarily want to drop them. And place them down in. Now, we lubricated the O-rings, so these do not need to be lubricated. See? So that's one reason I do this over the garbage can, is because if I do drop something, it doesn't bounce off the concrete floor and gets damaged. So it just kind of falls down into the plastic tub. So now that we have all of our nipple cups set on there, we can start by threading these in. So the nice thing about this socket is it kind of lines up the nipple cup so that it's straight, and you can see that these are nice and tight still, but we still haven't torqued these down. So we're going to go ahead and torque these down to 75 foot-pounds. So here is our nipple cups done, and they move, but they have firm pressure to be moved all the time instead of firm pressure to move them and then they're loose. So the idea here is you want to make sure that these are stiff all the way through. We're just going to get that one lined back up there. So these are all done now. So this is your nipple cup replacement on one rail. You would repeat this process to the other side. So now we are going to go ahead and work on doing the standpipes and dummy plugs. So we have our oil rail flipped over here. Now, depending on which side you're working on here, so the rear of the block would have the standpipe. So the front of the block would have the dummy plug. So in this scenario, the ICP, being the passenger side, would have the dummy plug on the front and the standpipe in the rear. So we're going to go ahead and get all of this installed. So we have our diesel site standpipes and dummy plugs here. Now there's 2 in each one of these bags. We also have the lower end, which we're not going to be installing right now. Now, when you get these out, we have the standpipe here. You see there's a cap on here. They're already lubricated, but that does not mean that you should not lubricate these again. Now, in this scenario here, you can see that this plastic O-ring has lapped itself the wrong way. So you just want to make sure that all these O-rings are lapped correctly, and Diesel Site gives you grease to put back on these. Now I'm going to lubricate these very liberally. The reason we do that is because you do not want these to get cut, period, end of story. And you want to make sure that you do this as clean as possible, which is why we cleaned this rail off as well as we did. So they give you this grease to use. So make sure that you put a good bit on here. Do not be scared of the grease. So they give you a lot. Don't be scared to use it. So well lubricated. Just push it down in gently. And we'll leave that one there. So then we're going to pull out the dummy plug here. Same thing, cap, check your plastic rings, make sure that they're lapped correctly, and then install the grease. you can go ahead and pull your caps off of here. And thread these in slowly by hand first. Make sure that you get them started. Now these are going to get torqued, but we're going to run them in with the ratchet by hand first. It's a little bit less cumbersome. So now we have these seated. Now that's why the lubrication is extremely important, because you're not going to tell if that O-ring didn't roll or tear or anything like that, because you're threading it down in with threads and a 1/2-inch drive ratchet. You're not going to feel that resistance. So that's why it's very important that you lubricate the O-rings properly. With diesel site, they send you the grease. They tell you to use the grease. A lot of other guys will tell you to use clean oil. So this torque spec for these is 60. A lot of guys will recommend more. So the torque spec for these is advertised as 60. If you choose to do more, that's up to you. So we have these torqued. Now we're going to carefully take this rail out of the vise here. And I want to show you something here. So we have our dummy plug here. Now this dummy plug has no ill effect on anything. It's a throughway. Now this guy over here, this guy can cause you a problem. So I'm actually going to put this cap on here and probably put a little bit of tape around all the way around to make sure that this gets no dirt on it or in it. So that is extremely important, because I want to lay these face down on the table. So I may even take this cap and lay it on the table and then set the standpipe in it. So this is your one rail done, and we'll complete this on the other rail as well. And one thing I want to make note of is, if you are doing your nipple cups, which we did on this rail, make extremely sure and certain that you have the threaded portion and the O-ring seat and everything in here absolutely clean. Now, I originally said that you can clean these if you wanted to, but doing a little bit more research and a little more thinking about this, you absolutely need to have this clean, because when this O-ring goes in, that O-ring needs to be clean and lubricated properly so that these ball seats that are on these nipple cups will seat down into the O-ring properly and not leak around them. So it's very, very important that this is very, very clean, and when you install these, to torque these down properly. Because if you do not do everything that you're supposed to do when you're doing an oil rail like this oil rail is under 3,000 plus pounds per square inch, so 3,000 psi, and sometimes more than that. So there's a lot of places that this can go wrong as far as leaking. So you want to make sure that when you're doing this, that everything is absolutely clean, because when you don't want that little speck of dirt to get in there and either nick an O-ring or get in between the O-ring and its sealing surfaces. So it's very important that everything is clean, and when you're doing this, and make sure that everything is well lubricated. Lubrication is a very big part of O-rings. So we have this oil rail done. We will do the other oil rail, but it's the same process as this. So we're going to call this one done. So hopefully this will help you guys out in doing your oil rail and doing your nipple cups and your dummy plugs and your standpipes. So it's very important that you follow these steps to make sure that you do this process correctly. And hopefully I did it correctly, because these things are super finicky and don't have to pull this engine back out again. But we did all this today here. You can repeat this on the other side. Make sure you follow the steps precisely, and do this correctly, and it should not give you any issues. So thank you for watching, guys. Hopefully this will help you out in working on your 6-liter, and we'll catch you on the next one.